The studio lights dimmed slightly as the host welcomed both guests with the same predictable tone. Caroline Leavitt sat poised, her notes untouched, eyes laser-focused across the glossy table at Jessica Tarlov, who adjusted her glasses and offered a practiced half-smile, the kind that says, "I know better than you." It didn't take long for the conversation to go from civil to nuclear. Jessica leaned in, her voice lined with syrupy condescension. "Look, I appreciate your enthusiasm, Caroline," she said, drawing out the name like a school teacher correcting a student. "But there's a difference between passion and naivete." The room stilled. The host blinked, unsure whether to interrupt or let it burn. Caroline didn't flinch. She offered a polite smile, then casually reached for her water. "Well," Caroline began, tone cool and steady, "I guess the question is, are you calling me naive now, or is this more of a throwback, like, dial-up internet?" The silence that followed was volcanic. Jessica's smirk faltered. A few staffers behind the camera exchanged wide-eyed glances. The host's mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Caroline continued, her voice unwavering. "Because if we're throwing around outdated labels, maybe we should check what decade your arguments are from." The tension snapped into nervous laughter from the panel, followed by applause from the small live audience. Jessica's face flushed with that tight diplomatic smile politicians wear when they've been hit, but can't show pain. Caroline leaned back in her chair slightly, her composure flawless. She didn't gloat. She didn't need to. The line had landed, and it echoed in the studio like a dropped mic. Jessica shuffled in her seat. "I've been in this game longer than you've been allowed to vote," she muttered. Caroline tilted her head, a flash of a grin breaking through. "Exactly," she said. "That might be part of the problem." Jessica straightened in her seat, clearly recalibrating. She wasn't used to being challenged so publicly, especially not by someone who wasn't even 30. She gave a small, measured laugh, the kind used to mask irritation. "I'm just saying," she started, tone clipped now, "experience matters. And yes, maybe my ideas go back a few decades, but so do the ones that built this country." Caroline arched an eyebrow. "You mean the same ones that built a $34 trillion national debt and a government so bloated it can't even pass a budget on time?" There it was again. That sharp, precise delivery. Caroline didn't rant. She didn't shout. She just sliced. Jessica's smile froze. The audience murmured again. The host leaned forward slightly, trying to regain control. "Let's focus on the issue," he offered. "Social programs. Are they being misused?" Jessica jumped on the lifeline. "Of course not. These programs are safety nets for Americans in need. But people like Caroline want to gut them because they believe everything should be privatized." Caroline didn't look away. "I believe in responsibility, Jessica. And I believe that when a system keeps people dependent instead of empowered, we have to question who it's really working for." Jessica scoffed. Spoken like someone who's never had to worry about medical bills or rent. Caroline's voice didn't waver. "I grew up in a middle-class family in New Hampshire. My dad worked overtime. My mom packed lunches for 3 kids every morning. Don't assume you know my story just because I speak with confidence." A hush settled again. Jessica hesitated. She'd played the personal card too fast, and it backfired. Caroline's answer had hit the one nerve pundits feared most: authenticity. The host cleared his throat. "Let's take a quick break," he said. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. Caroline sat back, calm as ever, while Jessica fidgeted with her pen. In that moment, the room wasn't just watching a debate. It was watching the balance of control shift. The cameras hadn't even cut to commercial yet, but the air in the studio had already changed. Jessica was visibly trying to recover, tapping her pen rhythmically, as if summoning a comeback. Caroline, meanwhile, sat still, controlled, deadly calm. The break ended quickly. The host looked relieved to shift the topic. "Let's talk cultural values," he said. "There's growing debate about patriotism, education, and what values we should be instilling in the next generation." Jessica jumped in. "That's exactly why people like me speak up. Because what we're seeing is a wave of radicalism wrapped in a flag, pretending it's freedom." Caroline leaned forward slightly, eyes sharp. "And what you're promoting is institutionalism wrapped in academia, pretending it's wisdom." Jessica's mouth parted, slightly stunned. She wasn't used to that kind of rhetorical precision. Caroline didn't let up. "Let's talk values. You mock younger conservatives like we're clueless, like we just repeat talking points. But here's a truth bomb for you. We're the generation cleaning up the mess your policies left behind." Gasps. Audible ones. Even the host blinked. Jessica laughed, but this one was hollow. You think tweeting with hashtags is cleaning up anything? Caroline smirked. Better than filing another report no one reads. The studio cracked, laughter, even from crew. The host tried to regain footing, but Caroline leaned in again. You keep preaching from a stack of articles, but people like me, we've lived through the fallout. School lockdowns, economic freefall, cancel culture turned government-sanctioned censorship. We're not naive, Jessica. We're forged. That word hit. Forged. Jessica took a breath, now blinking faster. You talk like you've already saved the country. No, Caroline replied calmly. I talk like I've just started. That was it. The pivot. The shift in dominance wasn't subtle anymore. It was visceral. Jessica glanced off camera. Her next line was coming, but it wouldn't matter. Caroline had already won the room, and possibly the narrative. Jessica leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowing, calculating. The condescension was gone now, replaced by something sharper, defensiveness. She wasn't used to being outmaneuvered, especially not by someone who, in her mind, hadn't paid her dues. You think a few years of tweeting and talking points makes you a policy maker? She said, voice tight. Caroline didn't blink. No, but standing up for the people who are tired of being ignored does. Jessica fired back. You speak for people like it's a brand. Populism isn't a personality trait, Caroline. It's a liability. Caroline smiled, but it wasn't kind. You know what's really a liability? Pretending to be above it all while everything beneath you burns. The audience stirred again. Murmurs filled the room. You could almost hear viewers at home pausing their remote mid-scroll. Jessica's tone hardened. You're reckless. You appeal to emotion, not reason. You don't understand the nuance of policy, the decades of negotiation, the institutional trust that's built over time. Caroline leaned forward. And where did that get us, Jessica? $7 gas, open borders, and classrooms more focused on pronouns than performance. That one stung. Jessica opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. For a split second, it looked like she might call for a break herself. Caroline pressed on. I don't need institutional trust. I need people to trust that someone, anyone, still has the spine to speak truth in a room full of rehearsed speeches. Even the host was silent now. The teleprompter might as well have gone dark. Jessica took a long sip of water, visibly trying to compose herself. It's dangerous the way you oversimplify everything. Caroline shrugged. It's dangerous how you complicate everything to avoid accountability. And that was it. Not a mic drop, because Caroline never raised her voice. She didn't perform. She executed. The generation gap wasn't just spoken about, it was lived, right there in front of the cameras. And for once, the older voice wasn't the one commanding the stage. The host shifted in his seat, eyes darting between Caroline and Jessica, as if silently pleading for a return to civility. But it was far too late for that. This wasn't just a debate anymore. It was a reckoning. Jessica adjusted her notes with shaky fingers. You talk like politics is a viral moment. Like claps and retweets are progress. Caroline didn't smile. Not this time. No, she said evenly. I talk like someone who's tired of being told to wait her turn. Jessica raised an eyebrow. That's what this is about. Impatience. Caroline's tone sharpened. It's about watching people like you wrap yourselves in credentials while real people drown in bureaucracy. Jessica exhaled through her nose. You want instant results. That's not how the system works. Caroline nodded slowly. Exactly. And that's the problem. For a second, the room felt like it had stopped breathing. Jessica leaned in now, voice more clipped. You're not the only one who's seen hardship, but screaming into a microphone doesn't fix a broken country. Caroline cocked her head slightly. And whispering in back rooms hasn't fixed it either. Boom. Even the cameraman's hands seemed to tense. The host's eyes darted off stage. Producers were already signaling, panicking over time. But there was no cutting this off now. Viewers were glued. Jessica tried one last shot. The world isn't as simple as you make it. Caroline stood her rhetorical ground. No, Jessica. You just make it complicated enough to excuse doing nothing. There it was. That final crack in the old armor. Jessica's face hardened, jaw tight. You think you're the future? Caroline didn't hesitate. No. I know I'm the wake-up call. Silence. Deafening. The kind of silence that lingers longer than words. The host finally spoke. We're out of time. But the story and the impact had already landed. Jessica may have had more experience, but Caroline, she had the momentum. And everyone felt it. The moment the host uttered, "We're out of time." No one moved. The tension in the room had solidified into something heavier, something unspoken yet undeniable. What had begun as a routine panel was now trending across social media feeds, with hashtags forming before the credits could roll. Caroline sat unmoved, her expression unreadable. Jessica, on the other hand, was visibly rattled, her jaw clenched, her hands fiddling with the same notepad she'd barely used. But the cameras were still rolling. The audience, the internet, the world, they wanted more. Jessica leaned in again. "You're not the first loud voice to walk onto this stage thinking she's the revolution." Caroline didn't flinch. "No, but I might be the first one to mean it." Jessica scoffed. "What you're doing isn't revolutionary. It's reckless. You take complex issues, strip them into sound bites, and sell them as truth." Caroline's tone was quiet now, but that made it worse. Sharper. "And you take broken systems, dress them up in footnotes and committee hearings, and pretend that's leadership." Boom. Jessica's retort was immediate. "Do you even understand how government works?" Caroline smiled, this time with teeth. "Yeah. It talks a lot and fixes little." "Sound familiar?" A few staffers couldn't help but laugh nervously. The host shifted again, clearly regretting every choice that led to this segment. Jessica bristled. "You're turning this into theater." Caroline nodded once. "Better than letting it stay a funeral." And there it was, the line. The one that broke through everything. Jessica sat back, silent now. And for the first time, she didn't have a follow-up. Caroline leaned into her mic, calm as ever. "You can call it naive. You can call it disrespectful. But I'll tell you what it really is, unfiltered. And the truth is unfiltered scares you." Jessica blinked, lips parted but soundless. The host, desperate to regain control, jumped in. "Thank you both. That's all for tonight." But everyone watching knew it wasn't. This moment wouldn't fade. It wouldn't disappear into the archives of another televised debate. Caroline hadn't just survived. She'd flipped the script and walked out holding the pen. The moment the studio lights dimmed and the live feed cut, chaos bloomed behind the scenes. Producers scrambled to regain control, headsets buzzing with frantic chatter. Interns rushed to check trending tabs, and sure enough, Caroline Leavitt's name was everywhere. Caroline rose from her seat, collected, her posture as calm as ever. A young staffer offered her a bottle of water. She declined with a nod of gratitude and adjusted her blazer instead, as if nothing had happened. As if she hadn't just dropped a rhetorical bomb on national television. Across the room, Jessica Tarlov was already surrounded by handlers. Their whispers were tight and rapid. Her face was frozen, not in defeat but in calculation. She wasn't new to this game, and she knew exactly what that segment looked like to the world. She'd been outmatched by someone half her age. Caroline moved past the cameras and toward the hallway with quiet confidence. Phones were buzzing. Her aide leaned in, whispering, "You broke 2.5 million views." And climbing. Caroline gave a small smile. "Let them talk." Back in the studio, the host slumped in his chair, muttering to his producer. "We're going viral for the wrong reasons." But even he couldn't deny the numbers. The internet was ablaze. Memes, quotes, clips, chopped and reshared across every platform imaginable. One tweet read, "Caroline just body-checked the establishment in under 10 minutes. Another, Jessica brought a folder. Caroline brought fire. Outside, reporters were already gathering. But Caroline didn't pause. She walked right past them, her steps firm. She wasn't running from anything. She was walking straight into the aftermath she'd created. One journalist called out, "Any regrets, Caroline?" She stopped, turned. "No regrets," she said. "Only proof that some people still can't handle straight answers." Jessica emerged a minute later, flanked by staff. Her smile had returned, but it didn't reach her eyes. For now, the moment belonged to Caroline. And the establishment, whether it admitted it or not, had just been formally disrupted. Within hours, the clip had shattered algorithmic ceilings. Major media outlets clipped the exchange, added bold captions, and aired it on loop. Cable news anchors tried to make sense of what they'd witnessed, but most only fueled the fire. CNN aired it under the banner, "Naive or bold." Caroline Leavitt sparks generational clash. Fox News simply called it. The night Caroline Leavitt took the gloves off. On Capitol Hill, phones rang nonstop. Staffers for moderate Democrats were frantically rewriting social media posts. Republican strategists were quietly thrilled. Younger conservatives posted TikToks lip-syncing Caroline's lines, while even apolitical influencers shared the moment with captions like, She said what everyone's thinking. This Gen Z just ate a boomer live on air. Meanwhile, Jessica's team issued a statement about elevating discourse and respecting generational differences, but it came off like damage control. Late-night shows jumped on it, using Jessica's silence after the dial-up comment as their punchline of the night. In think tanks and press rooms, analysts dissected the tone, the delivery, the power dynamics. But what no one could deny was this. Caroline Leavitt had tapped into something. Not just youth or energy, but frustration. Clarity. A refusal to be patronized. Podcasts lit up. Headlines buzzed. Rolled up newspaper. Caroline's mic drop heard round the beltway. Rolled up newspaper. Jessica's silence was louder than her policy points. Even some of Jessica's usual allies privately admitted she got caught flat-footed. Caroline's team knew it too. By the next morning, they'd scheduled 2 more interviews. Not to explain, not to apologize, just to speak. And when one interviewer asked her, "Do you think you went too far?" Caroline smiled, camera-ready as ever. "I think I didn't go far enough." 3 days later, the nation was still talking. The viral moment had evolved beyond a clip. It was now a cultural flashpoint. Cable news panels framed it as a generational referendum. Op-eds flooded major publications. Talk radio framed Caroline as the new voice of unapologetic truth, while others painted her as dangerously brash. In New York, Jessica walked silently past a row of cameras, no longer trying to defend her on-air stumble. Her team urged her to pivot, focus on policy, avoid petty clashes. But the damage lingered. Every speaking engagement she attended, every tweet she posted, someone brought up the dial-up moment. Meanwhile, Caroline leaned into the wave. She wasn't just reacting. She was owning. At rallies, supporters chanted, "After dial-up," like it was a battle cry. Young voters who had tuned out of politics were now quoting her on Instagram. Even late-night comedians who typically mocked conservatives had to admit. She had style. She had timing. And she had nerve. Political insiders on both sides of the aisle began asking, is this just a moment or the start of a movement? But not everyone was celebrating. Veteran lawmakers privately voiced concern. She's skipping steps, one senator mumbled in a hot mic moment. And the scary part is, it's working. Caroline, for her part, refused to soften. In a podcast interview, she was asked whether she planned her line about dial-up. She shook her head. No, that was instinct. That was me refusing to sit there and let someone tell me I haven't earned my voice because I wasn't alive during the Cold War. That clip alone hit 8 million views. Jessica finally re-emerged on a Sunday panel. More measured, more cautious. She referenced the conversation we need to be having, but avoided direct mentions of Caroline. It didn't matter. The audience heard it. The tension hadn't vanished. It had just gone silent. And across the country, people weren't choosing sides based on party lines anymore. They were choosing based on voice. A week later, Caroline stood backstage. Mic clipped to her collar. Pulse steady. Outside the curtain, a sold-out auditorium buzzed. Not just with supporters, but with skeptics, reporters, and plenty of eyes waiting to see if she could do it again. This wasn't cable TV. This was her own stage. A producer gave her the cue. She stepped out into the lights, her heels echoing across the floor as the crowd surged with energy. She took the podium, but didn't start with applause lines. No chest pounding. No dramatics. Just that same voice, measured, confident, direct. Last week, I was called naive, she began, pausing just long enough for the crowd to stir. And maybe that was supposed to sting. But if believing in hard truth over soft talking points is naive, then I'll wear it like a badge. Applause erupted. She didn't smile. Not yet. I was told I don't understand the system. That I haven't paid my dues. That I'm too young to speak on legacy. Too new to challenge what's always been done. She leaned forward slightly. Let me be crystal clear. I didn't come here to inherit this broken system. I came here to confront it. The crowd was on its feet now. Some people still think politics is about who speaks the calmest behind closed doors. I think it's about who has the courage to say what everyone's been whispering for years. She finally smiled. And to anyone still wondering if I belong in this conversation, just know this. You can call me whatever you want. Naive, bold, reckless, radical. But the truth. She paused, locking eyes with the front row. I'd rather be underestimated than unnoticed. Thunderous applause. Phones recording. Cameras flashing. Somewhere across town, Jessica watched from her office alone. No audience. No spotlight. Just the soft hum of her phone lighting up with more people tagging her in clips, memes, and headlines that no longer included her voice. Caroline stepped back from the podium, letting the roar of the crowd carry her final words. And as the lights dimmed, one thing was unmistakably clear. The era of quiet, cautious politics was being replaced by something louder, sharper, and unignorable. I've been called a lot of things lately: naive, loud, lucky, unqualified. But here's the truth they don't want to say out loud. I didn't win that debate because I shouted louder. I won because I refused to play by the rules that were written to keep voices like mine silent. They say, respect your elders. Sure, but not when they're using that age to silence accountability, not when they hide behind experience and confuse it with entitlement. This isn't just about me. It's about every young woman who's ever been told to wait her turn, every voice that's been dismissed before it even had a chance to speak, and every person watching tonight wondering if their truth is too raw, too risky, too real. I'm here to tell you, speak anyway. Because if shaking the room makes them uncomfortable, maybe the room needed shaking. So, no, I'm not sorry. Not for the words, not for the fire, not for daring to challenge someone who thought she had the floor just because she had the resume. You want polished? Look elsewhere. You want truth? I'll be right here.